Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to this edition of All Access AM, our second episode. It is Wednesday, October 15th. I'm Billy Embody. Thanks for listening to us wherever you're catching us at. Make sure you follow us, All Access AM, on X, Instagram, or you can find us on YouTube there. And we've got a jam-packed show, and we're going to jump right into our guests of the day. Florida State obviously started out with a bang this year, beating Alabama, but have since fallen on tough times in ACC play, which has been exactly where they've been over the last 16 months or so. And the Seminoles are trying to pull themselves out of it. They got a late night game on the West Coast this weekend at Stanford. And to preview that game and kind of talk about the state of the Seminoles under Mike Norvell, we bring in War Chant's Matt LaSerre, one of the top guys I know in our network, just doing a great job covering the Seminoles there. And Matt, thanks for the time this morning over there in Tallahassee.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, man. I'm excited to talk a little bit.
What is the temperature like over there in Tallahassee after, what a start to the season? Everybody thinks, okay, all the buttons that were pressed are there and have worked. And now it's a lot more the same in ACC play.
Yeah, I think if you would have told me 3 months ago they were 3-3 to start the year, I'd be like, that sounds about right. That's probably okay. And then you tell me it's 3-3 with a win over Alabama, you'd be like, what the hell's going on? Like, that doesn't sound right. But it's it went from the highs to highs to back to the lows to lows. It's kind of weird how it's gone. The weird part is it's a kind of a weird time to fire a coach right now, even though everyone's doing it. I think that the market might be too big for Florida State to kind of go into it right now. And then the big buyout, even though Penn State just paid out James Franklin too, I think it just makes it tough to make a decision with all the factors going on. Like, your home run hire right now would probably be Alex Golesh, just with all the money flying around.
Yeah, I was about to say, that is a guy who has, certainly raised eyebrows in the state of Florida. And, college football is better when the entire state of Florida is rolling. It's more competitive. You've got Seminoles, of course, but Florida Gators, Miami Hurricanes, and then UCF and USF have kind of pulled their weight at various times over the last 30, 40 years or so, dating back to when those programs got underway. And, for Florida State, do you think that'd be something where if they opted to move on from Mike Norvell, is that beneath them to go hire the USF head coach, even though it shouldn't be?
I think the fan base wouldn't be too happy about it, and they would be like, oh, really? This is the best we can get? But yeah, I think in general, again, with the buyout being so big in the NIL era where you have rev share and in-house, I think you have to go look at a cheaper guy, right? Because then you can pay your players more. And that's, in general, there's probably be a market correction when it comes to all these coaching contracts. There has to be. There's just, ADs need to learn how to negotiate a little bit better too. But it's, yeah, I think that honestly he would be a good hire. I've liked him. I've watched USF a good amount this year. A lot of it has been because they've played UF in Miami, and our fan base wants them to win both those games. But it's I think he'd be a great hire for Florida State, someone who already knows the area. He's for USF, he's recruited fairly well, right? And I think that would have to be a top target for you already.
And let's get back on the field a little bit. We might circle back there to the coaching carousel world and the realness of a potential change at the top at FSU. But they do head out to play Stanford this weekend. This West Coast trip is no joke. It's I just asked James Franklin how it went for them out there against UCLA. But for Florida State, I mean, this is an opportunity at a get-right game. Stanford got an up-close look at them this past weekend when SMU faced off with them, and they are a team that is still very much trying to develop new personnel that can actually bring them back to where they were earlier in the 2000s. And how much pressure is on Florida State right now to get this done? Like, if they go out there, I mean, that they got to come away with a win in this sense.
Yeah, it's definitely a must win, especially because, Stanford talent-wise is probably the worst in the ACC. I think, I know that's a little tough to say out loud, but that is probably the truth. And, if you don't win this game, like I said before, I don't think the Mike Norvell firing is imminent at all, as long as he doesn't lose to Stanford, right? Because I think that would put it on a completely different level of where you're looking at his career. But in general, yeah, this is a get-right game. You need to win it. You're more talented. The Stanford offensive line is banged up. This is a good one for the defensive line to get pressure again, gain some confidence that they've lost over the last few weeks. And the issue is Florida State's been a little banged up as well. You saw that against Pitt last week, where there was one point in the fourth quarter where they didn't have a single starting wide receiver healthy, and they're trying to run the ball out, and then Keziah Holmes fumbles, and that basically does the game in for you. So it's kind of be interesting to see how the offense runs a little bit. Deuce Robinson is probably going to be under that questionable, doubtful area going into the game, and that's probably the most important one. That's Tommy's favorite guy. That's the guy he looks at the most. I think Squirrel White will be good to go. Javon Boggs will probably trend towards being good to go. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be, if they don't win this game, all hell's going to break loose already again. So it's a big time week for the Noles.
And so many changes have taken place under Mike Norvell, and I think he's one of the better coaches in the country. I really do. I know things have not gone that well over the last year or so, but trying to press the button and saying, look, I'm going to give up play calling, I'm going to go with Gus Malzahn, that has actually not necessarily been the problem. There's been injuries. There's the defensive side is still working things out. Is that kind of how you guys feel down there in Tallahassee covering it?
Yeah, I do. I think it's and I think Gus almost slipped saying, like, are you talking about literally during the press conference, are you talking about the offense? We're like, well, I guess they feel the same way on the inside a little bit. Yeah, it's what's weird about the defense is that we saw them do it against Alabama. Like, it's not like it's not there. And I think Tony White said it best in his press conference on Sunday is that they need to tone it back a little bit. They might have thrown too much at them at one time, and now they're playing a little confused. They're not just running at the ball and going to hit somebody. So I think that's the biggest thing is this week their goal is to tone it back and go back to the basics so that they can play as free that they did against Alabama and as physical as they did against Alabama. Again, it's there. We've all seen it. There's no reason why you shouldn't be able to repeat it again, and you just need to figure out a way for them to get up for a game like Stanford. And I think maybe it's a motivational thing. That would make a lot of sense too, because you don't play a brand name like Alabama until Clemson, or you played Miami, but Miami's just really good. That's the thing with Miami. They might win the Natty, but it's other than that, it's kind of been hard for them to get up for some of these games.
Defense, that's a group that they've always tried to pour money into to fix and do this and do that. It just hasn't necessarily clicked all the way so far this year. But expectation, that's the thing with this whole deal with Mike Norvell. There's got to be a world where he's back next year no matter what because of what they've invested in the changes. And at least right off the bat, it worked. Now it's finding that consistency on the defense a little bit more.
Yeah, 100% agree. Again, like I said, it's unless you lose to Stanford, he's probably going to be here next year. You're probably going to have another roster building offseason with him just because, it takes forever to, Florida State isn't these big money schools. They're top 15 NIL roster probably, but they $50 million just doesn't come out of a hat anywhere. It takes time to fundraise that. And like I said, I think losing to Stanford would make that go pretty quickly. But it's in general, yeah, I think Norvell will be around next year and he will stay and have another offseason to build a roster. There's a bunch of places we go, and I think Tommy might stay. That's a little complicated waiver thing because I think if you look back before the redshirt rule didn't count the bowl game. He played 5 games and the 5th was the bowl game. So realistically, he should be able to get a waiver and play another year at Florida State. And you have that consistency under Malzahn, another year in the offense for that technically be 3 years in the offense for Tommy Castellanos if you count his year at UCF as a backup. So it's I do think he'll stay, and we're gonna have to kind of ride this out. Hopefully, look, they can still right the ship and win out. That's a possibility, but you still have Clemson and Florida at the Swamp on the schedule.
Yeah, that FSU Florida game, that kind of loom large in your mind at least? Just being able to kind of put it all together for a change and beat an SEC team again this year and kind of bookend what seems like a season that's going to be filled with ups and downs.
Hey, Norvell would win the SEC. Clearly, he never loses to SEC teams. But he, that it's always an important game. You saw a lot of people get mad after the Miami game just because it's a rival, even though Miami is really good. Realistically, your chances of winning that game were, in hindsight, were probably pretty low. They might, like I said, I think they might be a short list to win the national championship. But Florida is a team that likely they're not going to have their head coach for that game. I think a lot of people expect Billy to get fired this Sunday, win or lose. And it's going to be interesting to see who's their interim coach going to be. We've seen it at Florida State where Odell Higgins becomes the interim head coach, and everyone loves Odell and wants to play for Odell. So maybe Florida's getting up for this new assistant coach, and you're at the Swamp, which is tough. But again, yeah, if you go into the end of the year and you win a few games you're not supposed to, and you beat UF, that you're going into the offseason with a good taste in your mouth. And probably at that point, you're looking at a bowl game more than likely, right? And they did go 2-10 last year. 6-6, getting to a bowl game is a huge improvement from 2-10. So I think you would have a better taste in your mouth, and you would probably have some momentum going into the offseason.
Do you see this game for Florida State kind of playing out like it should, at least talent-wise, or is this one that, you know, the West Coast travel going to wear on the Noles a little bit, and it's just going to be kind of get out and you try to avoid what happened to Penn State, obviously, out on the West Coast?
Yeah, I mean, I would still say I'm a little nervous about it. I would be surprised if they lost. But, I mean, like, look, their talent isn't great. Their best player is Clay Patterson. The only reason I know him is because I literally graduated high school with him. Like, that's the only reason why I know who he is. So it's like, I think you should win pretty easily. The big thing against Pitt, too, is that their freshman quarterback, was super mobile, probably more than they expected, even though they knew that. They said it going into it. Because if you look at that game, how many times do they have everybody covered? It looks like the pocket's collapsing, and then he runs for 20 yards. The Stanford quarterback isn't doing that. His rushing yards is literally, I looked it up yesterday, negative 140 or something like that, because it's all getting sacked. Yeah. So I think that's going to be a big deal. You got big confidence game for the defensive line to where I think they'll finally get home or be able to get home, and they'll start feeling themselves again like they were after Alabama. And I think that'll be big for this team.
SMU got 6 sacks off of them just last week, 3-on-1 drive. So for the Noles, who always stack up talent in the trenches, it seems like that's your get right game, like you said. And you know, kind of like, let's circle back, you know, one more time to Mike Norvell, kind of the status for him. Is this a world where there just needs to continue to be fine tuning on what the long term vision is here? Is this a world where, okay, let's go hire a GM or make a change up at the top there and kind of reevaluate how this roster is managed, how it's acquired, how it's retained, all of those things, and kind of let things kind of play out a little bit longer? Because I'm with you, man. Like these buyouts that coaches are getting paid, you need schools to take leadership here, and not by signing these buyouts, number one. Yeah. But two, you've got to say, hey, let's manage the athletic department like we're supposed to. And under that athletic department is the football team. Hey, we recommend that some changes be made. Maybe let's go out and hire a GM that, you know, look at what Jim Nagy has done, you know, all of his qualifications for Oklahoma. Look at some of the different hires that schools have made at that position and how it's paid off for them. Is that something that Florida State is already there and they just maybe need a change, or are they kind of going down that road? What's your take? Because I think, again, the football side of things, Norvell's great.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And the things against Norvell is never like, it hasn't been like, man, we just hate Norvell altogether. It's like, dude, Norvell's a really good guy, but we can't take this anymore. Like, we can't be losing to Pitt. That's been the sentiment all around. And it's, you know, they have a GM and Derek Ray. I think in general, people need to see the high school recruiting getting better if we're looking at it from that perspective, because this whole thing has been built from the portal. And I think you have seen improvement there in general. And I've talked about this on my show, is that, like, Florida State's probably not going to be a top 5 recruiting team anymore. Not in this world. Top 15, the top 10, like lower top 10 is probably where you're at. At a good year, you're probably looking at 7, 6, like around there. But that's where it probably needs to get better. You need to be able to hold on to kids. Like right now, Jay Timmons, a kid who was literally born, he lives in Pittsburgh, but literally born in Tallahassee. His dad went to Florida State. His mom went to Florida State. He's visiting Ohio State officially this weekend. Like, that's a guy you need to hold on to. That's a legacy. He's a 5-star talent. That's a guy you need to hold on to. And those are the recruitments that Norvell has been able to hold on to in the past, like your Travis Hunters, your KJ Boldens, stuff like that. So if you hold on to those guys we consider generational talents in the industry, like, you're looking at a completely different talent roster right now. Like, could you imagine Travis Hunter on that 2023 team? They're not getting left out of the playoff. Yeah. Like, it's kind of insane.
Like yesterday, man.
yeah. But again, I think, I agree. Like, maybe you need to bring in a guy in whatever position coach it is, or maybe he's just like a front office, quote unquote guy, a recruiter, a guy who like is known for recruiting, I think could solve a lot of problems.
It'll be interesting. This world of recruiting going to change. The new transfer window is out in January. So Norvell and company at Florida State, if they're still there, which
Yeah.
I think they're there.
They should. They should be.
They should be.
There's not enough money in the pot right now to, unless again, if they beat Stanford, I think you can, or lose to Stanford, I think you can raise $50 million pretty quick.
Yeah, no question about it. So, we've seen that with losses to bad teams on the West Coast. That's usually the precursor to a bunch of money getting poured into a firing. But Matt LaSerre, warchant.com. We know you got to head off to practice. Follow him on X at LaSerre Matt, and we appreciate you jumping on with us. Looking forward to having you back on in the future.
Thank you, Billy, for having me again.
Yep, good to see you, man.
You too.
All right, there he goes. Matt LaSerre joining us this morning on All Access AM. We appreciate him stopping in as trying to get my screen right here. But we will be joined by Bryce Koon here shortly. He's going to talk a little Georgia Tech. He has seen Clemson up close and personal for those SMU fans in the chat listening as well. So we'll have Bryce here at 7:20 a.m. Central Time here, and we'll get a good look at Georgia Tech ahead of their matchup this weekend at Duke, a massive one in the ACC, as those two teams, both unbeaten in the ACC, both in very different worlds, coming off of their non-conference slate. Duke, disappointing run in non-conference, unable to get wins over Illinois, and on the road at Tulane, Darian Mensah. This is where he's got a chance to make some of his money and pull an upset over Georgia Tech. I actually believe Georgia Tech might be the dogs in this game. Pull it up right now. Duke -1.5 on that one. I am very tempted to go ahead and give out my pick there ahead of Bryce getting in the studio, where Georgia Tech is going to win, obviously outright. But that is, I just have a tough time seeing Duke putting it together against this Georgia Tech team with the way they've played throughout the season. This is a game that Brent Key, I think, would love to grind it out. And if they win 10-7, they won't really care. They'll get out of there with a win and keep on rolling for what seems like a trip to Charlotte, if all things go to plan for them the rest of the season. But before we get to Bryce Koon joining us in just a couple minutes, I do want to tell you guys about one of our partners here at All Access AM, and that is OPW Solutions. OPW Solutions is a commercial real estate, landscaping and power washing, snow and ice control company. They can do it all for you in that world, and they maintenance all sorts of exterior businesses and commercial landscaping that you need done. They can also do fence and concrete repair. That is something that I actually need to look into with them. We've got a little fence that is already starting to warp a little bit. Get them out, get a quote. And that's because they service North Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and they're expanding more into the Southeast in 2026. They're excited about that as well. And they have a company that can manage it all for you. They're really building out so many of their warehouses and things like that so they can serve you more efficiently. But most importantly, how to reach them: 214-444-3305 or email them info@opwsolutions.com. Go to opwsolutions.com today. You see the commercial landscaping, the power washing, snow and ice control if you're watching us on YouTube. And guess what? They can even install your Christmas lights. That's where you add in there, and he can paint your back porch too. That is what OPW Solutions can do for you. I'm sure if you talk to AJ Crow over there and his team, they can get you hooked up with a little back porch painting if you need it too. But whether it be that fence maintenance, Christmas lights, parking lot services, or more, they can hook you up with all their services. They're a one-stop shop, and they do it with a smile on their face too. If you follow them on social media, you can meet some of their team and all of their people that help them service you. So we appreciate OPW Solutions for supporting us at All Access AM. Really excited to get Bryce Koon in here now to join us, one of On3's own. And Bryce, welcome into the show. Really appreciate you joining us. Love the Masters hat, the Georgia Tech coverage, just flaunting that you're just, hour and a half, 2 hours over there from Augusta.
Yeah, no, man, I appreciate the opportunity. Pumped that you're diving into more ACC coverage, and overall, man, it's a big weekend for Georgia Tech. Bit of a litmus test opportunity as they head on the road to Duke.
No question about it. What is your read on this this matchup first and foremost. So let's just jump in there from a 50,000-foot view.
Yeah, I think when you look at this game, you go back into kind of the history of this matchup, and it's two teams in the ACC that have been pretty comparable. Like they've kind of been those teams that have been in the middle tier. And I said this in the preseason. This game would probably determine who could jump out of that 4, 5, 6 range up into the upper echelon of the ACC. And look, we sit here in October, and that opportunity is right there. I mean, Duke got a lot of the preseason headlines with their moves, plucking Darian Menza for a healthy price tag out of Tulane, and
what we get paid.
Georgia Tech. I don't want to say it was quiet, but there was some quiet confidence about what they brought back, and we see now why Brent Key was so excited about what they brought back. So that 50,000-foot view, I think we kind of sit here and you say, hey, look, a lot of the books still have Duke favored in nearly a pick'em game here, and you kind of understand why. I think Manny Diaz has a defense that's going to play pretty well. The difference this year is they got an offense that can get after you, especially in the run game. So, for Georgia Tech, this is no disrespect to what they played last week against Virginia Tech, but Billy, we're all aware of kind of what the Hokies are going through. But this is another opportunity, and man, maybe I don't want to be any type of way about it. It might be the last opportunity before they face Georgia at the end of the year to really kind of get a marquee resume win. So for Georgia Tech, it's can you take care of business on the road and do what you need to do? Brent Key has been notorious for getting this team up for big games. This is a big game, but you don't get to play it at home. So it's I think it's a litmus test for Georgia Tech, but it's also a litmus test for Brent Key and kind of where he continues to develop as a head coach.
For me, Georgia Tech is probably the number one team right now. Maybe if you look at a wider range of the last 2 decades, it'd be Dabo Swinney at Clemson. But the number one team right now of taking on the personality of their head coach.
Yeah.
And it's something that can be tested week in, week out. How focused can you get these guys? Because every week, it seems like in college football, in this wide open entire landscape, we're seeing teams that should be focused and have been focused, then lose focus and take their eye off the ball. They don't execute, and you end up getting an Oregon-Indiana situation. For Georgia Tech, on the other hand, their style with how he kind of hammers that home every single week, it's impressive the way he's been able to have his team ready to go really for every single game. I mean, that because feels like it's such a hard environment in a sense to live in, unless you just do that good of a job of finding those players that just love it. They love the grind and they love that mentality.
Yeah, I mean, I think when Key came on in that interim role, which feels like forever ago, but it's been a minute now. Georgia Tech didn't really have an identity. I mean, it was kind of like that boat that had broken down out in the middle of the water, and they were just kind of wandering. I mean, they just kind of were just stagnant out there. And you fast forward 3 years, and this is a team that, for better or worse, they know who they are. And I think I said this probably after the Clemson game. This is a team for me that, outside of maybe a couple of teams in the country, there might not be a team who knows who they are more than Georgia Tech. Like, they don't try to be something different. Buster Faulkner does a good job. I see the comment down there, new DC Blake Gideon. I mean, he's establishing that identity there. When we look at this, Brent Key has done a fantastic job of creating a standard and consistently getting these guys to hit that standard. Now, is it, without the bumps and bruises? No, of course not. I mean, there's obviously, it's far from perfection, but it's really interesting to see and to say, and, Billy, you've done this with SMU, you've done this with Georgia Tech. I mean, just going back 5-6 years where you had multiple back-to-back 3-win seasons, and just to see that transformation, it is one of the cool stories in college football. And it's a place where, I think a lot of people can look at it and say, this is a program. College football's better when college football is better at Georgia Tech. I mean, when you get a quality team there, Brent Key has them like that. So, like you mentioned, playing at that level consistently, we'll see if it results in a win on Saturday, but it's definitely made things interesting. It's the reason they got that top 15 ranking.
Shout out Kevin Rainwater. I hope that beard is real down there if you see it. Morning, boys. Thanks for the GT coverage. That is tremendous. If so, I think it might be dubbed over, but could be wrong. Bryce, this ACC is wide open, and I think that's, there's going to be the talking points all over the place of, oh, they're beating up on each other, or they're all not that good. I think the top 5 is a pretty good group. Maybe you could argue Duke, probably not in that group, but the top 4 right now of the undefeated teams of Miami, Georgia Tech, SMU, and Virginia really playing a high level of football right now. And their resume as a whole is very good. I think last year we saw it kind of fall off just a little bit with so much inconsistency, but the teams so far are at least taking advantage of this wide open nature of this league. And we'll see how the rest of these schedules for Georgia Tech and UVA play out, for example, because they are, advantageous. But you've got this league that I think is really kind of proving to be one of the more fun ones to watch as far as what the conference championship race could be the second half of this year.
Yeah, I always joke with the fans on our podcast because when they split from divisions and just went kind of, I guess, 1 through 17 now, you were scared. Would you get coastal chaos? That what used to happen each and every single year, and you're still finding it, obviously, in that. I mean, I love that the ACC has really honed in on that Friday night game that really puts a spotlight on it. I mean, Billy, as well as I do, it's hard to get a night game in the ACC on a Saturday night. Georgia Tech's finding out the hard way, with homecoming next weekend against Syracuse. But to your point, I mean, when you look at the top half of the ACC, look, they may not have the stockpile of draft picks that other conferences have, but you're watching some really good football. And I think, we talk a lot about this on our show. Virginia, Georgia Tech, SMU established themselves last year, and Miami obviously has it, but the brand value associated with maybe Georgia Tech and Virginia to the casual observer isn't necessarily what it is to an LSU in the SEC or a Penn State in the Big Ten. And so I think people are kind of trying to get used to the idea of like, oh, we could see a college football playoff with the Virginia logo or the Georgia Tech logo. They don't know what to think about it, and that's fine. But I think the ACC is doing a good job of positioning itself to be it's probably, gosh, when you look at that in the Big 12, I mean, just they eat each other up, and it's a competitive conference. So to your point, I mean, this is an opportunity for Duke to try to push their way into that conversation after sputtering early in the year against Illinois and down at Tulane. So I'm excited for this game. I'm excited to see what the back half of the season looks like, because if you've been around the ACC for any amount of time, what it looks like in September, October, it can look vastly different in late November.
Bryce Koon of On3 Sports and the Crowded Booth at the Crowded Booth joining us on this Wednesday morning. Bryce, the Clemson team that we've seen this year, you got a chance to watch them up close and personal as LSU took them on this year in Death Valley, or not, and got the win over there. I teed that one up for all the LSU, if there are any LSU fans. But this Clemson team is not what we've seen, but Dabo Swinney and his track record of getting them to believe down that stretch is something that we're all kind of going to find out, I think, this weekend, if that's going to happen. That is probably the biggest storyline for me out of this weekend, because, look, Georgia Tech and Duke are going to do their thing, and that's going to be a good game, I think. And you're going to see, I think, Georgia Tech come out on top, so it kind of keeps everything headed in the right direction for Georgia Tech to make a college football playoff appearance. But Clemson, if they can reel off a win and you get some chaos, then things start to get interesting once again with, Dabo Swinney's magic down the stretch of this season.
Yeah, I mean, I remember watching that team up close and personal in week 1, and then obviously when Georgia Tech faces off against them in week 3. And, I talked about this in person. I just felt like Clemson didn't show that elite speed on the outside, and that was something that they just really lacked. And if they can somehow figure out and turn this thing around, which a lot of people just the diehard Clemson fans just point, well, look what happened last year.
Yeah,
I don't want to play with fire too often in that sense, but I think that in my opinion with Clemson, they have enough talent to turn this thing around. You kind of have to start worrying about maybe the mentality, like what's in between the ears of some of the guys there, because you're banging your head against a wall and you feel like you're putting in the work. The results aren't there. And There's a couple programs across the country that feel like maybe they should have another win or two in the column for them. And I think Clemson's one of those teams that feels like they should have at least one, maybe two, against both LSU and Georgia Tech. So if Clemson wins this weekend, it does create a scenario to where you can't just chalk it out and say, okay, because I think a lot of people right now, Billy, are saying, all right, it's probably going to be Miami, and then it's going to be one of SMU, Georgia Tech, Virginia, or Duke if they were able to knock off Georgia Tech this weekend. If Clemson wins, it starts to throw a wrench into this thing where you're like, man, the next 90 days are just going to be an absolute – I don't know if you've done this yet, Billy. We've done this on our show. Like, the tiebreaker scenario is absolutely
get my quarters
mess.
out.
It's a mess. Yeah, you got to get – you got to go hire somebody to get on an Excel spreadsheet to kind of look at this thing because it's ridiculous. So if Clemson can turn this thing around quickly, it's got to happen now. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing. If they lose this weekend, then you kind of start to say, okay, you never want to say they're out, but the odds of them getting to Charlotte are pretty bleak in my opinion.
Yeah, we appreciate all the Georgia Tech fans in the comments right now, shouting them out, throughout the show. Aaron Holland rolling with us this morning. Bryce, you spent some time around SMU over this offseason. What stood out to you from your, first impressions of this program and just kind of how they operate, and obviously now putting their conference winning streak to the test this weekend at Clemson?
Yeah, I think, the biggest thing, Bill, and you and I've talked a little bit about this, is they didn't want last year to be this one-hit wonder. Like, that was really, really important to them. And just talking with some people, in and around the program and just seeing how those guys operate, there's a belief that was I hesitate to say, kicking off the foundation, because they left the American Conference on pretty good terms in what they were doing success-wise there. But they didn't want this to be a flash in the pan. And there was some turnover in the portal with what they had to do and had to replace. And I think you kind of maybe saw that a little bit early in the season of guys settling into new roles and new guys settling into their roles. But look, when you've got a quarterback with the caliber of Kevin Jennings, he's going to give you a chance. And not to belabor the point, that's where a lot of those top SEC teams feel like they are. Haynes King, he's the same type of player. Like, if you got a good quarterback, you got a chance in this league to do some damage. So with SMU and what they've been able to do, to bounce back after that loss to Baylor, I know was just gut-wrenching, a gut-wrenching loss. But it shows you, I think, the poise that Rhett Lashley has inside that building to say, okay, hey, we're not out of it. Like, that happened to them last year where they kind of sputtered to start the season. They go on this run. So I like what they're building over there in that area. And I've mentioned to you, like, I'm pumped to be there in a couple of weeks for what hopefully is a 1 versus 2 matchup, maybe a preview of what you could see in Charlotte. But overall, SMU is, I think, a solid program that just – the big thing, they didn't want last year to be that flash in the pan. They wanted to showcase, hey, we're here. We can be a consistent top 4, top 5 team each and every single year in this conference. And I think they've garnered a lot of respect from the old guard of the ACC in that sense.
I'm not there on Miami yet in a sense of like, all right, just write it in Sharpie. They're going to be in Charlotte. And that's but they have looked like the number 1 team in the country. I understand why they're number 2 in, some polls, or some people have them, 2 versus Ohio State being number 1. But man, they have meshed this Carson Beck, veteran quarterback who's won a bunch of big games and kind of, game manager, but probably at this point, not fair to call him that anymore, with, a stud freshman like Malachi Toney. They've got the defensive line rolling with Ruben Bain. They've got CJ Daniels, who well. They just have all of these pieces that are just, it seems like this is it, the perfect storm for Miami to become, a Cat 5 and roll into Charlotte and then the college football playoff.
Yeah, I was on the sideline. I know you were there in Charlotte last year, and there were 2 Miami fans posted up in the corner of the end zone, and you knew they had bought those tickets way early on, thinking their team was going to be there. And I think they're doing the same thing this year, and I don't blame them. I mean, I think that this team is way more complimentary on both sides of the football. The hire they made in the offseason for the defensive coordinator position, I think, it has paid off. I think they've been really good. I mean, it's easy to look good when you got Ruben Bain, a guy who might be a top 10, top 5 pick for somebody next April. But the big difference for me with Miami is that you're seeing Carson Beck do a really good job. And I was talking about this with someone. He's doing a really good job of layering the football with their weapons. And that's something that he struggled with at Georgia, and you can pinpoint whatever. Was it the not having Brock Bowers and Vlad McConkey? Maybe that was a little bit of it last year in Athens. Was it just an overall lack of disconnect? It might have been. And I think both parties now look at it and say, hey, that was the best decision to mutually part ways, and Georgia feels good about their situation. Miami feels great where they are. But it kind of feels like, if not now, when for Mario Cristobal in Miami? I mean, you mentioned it earlier. This is a wide open ACC. And I like how you said it. Like, I think all ACC watchers and fans are hesitant to put up and say, okay, this is it. But man, if it's not this year, I don't know when. I really like their run game. I like where Carson Beck is. He's not making a lot of mistakes. CJ Daniels, I think, is proving that he's the type of player that we thought we were going to see in Baton Rouge, that we didn't see. And that's the guy, that was at Liberty. You mentioned Tony. I mean, holy cow, there might not be a more impressive freshman receiver in the country in terms of intangibles combined with the physical attributes that he has. So I like Miami a lot. I haven't taken out the ballpoint pen yet and putting them in Charlotte, but I'm awfully close just because I think they have it this year in terms of to withstand. Now, a lot of fans, and I know the Tech fans that tune into our show, they remember what happened 2 years ago in Coral Gables. They're hoping that Mario Cristobal does not get too involved and mess things up. I feel like that's about, that's the only thing that could hold them back, because the talent on the field is complementary, and I think they've got the pieces this year to make a pretty nice run.
Do you have two ACC teams making it? Does Georgia Tech, do its thing? Because the only way SMU's getting in and Duke is getting in is if they go to Charlotte and win. UVA should have a nice case if they make it to Charlotte to get in as an undefeated ACC team.
So I have two ACC teams in, and the question mark for me is, okay, if Miami, let's just hypothetically say they don't have to run the table, but they won, maybe lose a game, maybe they'll lose in Dallas here in a couple of weeks, and they make it to Charlotte, they win. Okay. The case for Georgia Tech is really interesting because that resume win against Clemson is going to lose a little bit of its sparkle. We mentioned earlier, I think Tech needs to be the biggest Clemson fans week in and week out here going forward, because that needs to look better. They need them to somehow creep back in the top 25. You got to go on the road, and I think this weekend, this is a resume opportunity game, not just winning it, but if you can go on the road and win by double digits, that's very impressive with what Manny Diaz's crew is. If Georgia Tech goes undefeated in conference play, like Aaron says here, it sets the stage for that game that's going to be in Mercedes-Benz against Georgia. I mean, Billy, I've tried to play this game in my head so many times. If you lose that one and you're 11-1 and you lose in the ACC title game, you're 11-2. But then comes the resume question: where is your marquee win, and what is the committee going to favor? You know as well as I do. I think we talked about this. You were sweating it out last year, wondering what the committee was going to favor. So I don't know. I don't want to say with 100% certainty that they're going to be there, but I do think that there's a sense of they've got the path, right? And they can control their own destiny. And I'll just tell you this, man. I mentioned it earlier with Kevin Jennings. If you've got number 10, Haynes King under center, I'm not going to count you out of any game. I'm done trying to critique, Georgia Tech and maybe some of their deficiencies, and they have some. But, man, when you've got Haynes King under center, you've got a chance each and every single day.
Yeah, no question about it. It'll be a hell of a race for the ACC. We think everything is trending that way. Do you have a champion? Are you locking in a pick on that? We'll let you get out of here with that.
2 months ago, I would have said Clemson, so I don't even think I should speak anymore on this. But no, right now I'm going to go Miami. That's maybe the safe pick. But as you know, anything can happen in this league. And shoot, we could be staring down the barrel of a Virginia-Georgia Tech game there in Charlotte in early December.
No question about it. Well, it's going to be a fun weekend of ACC football. Louisville, Miami. Is this, at Miami, is this game one that you feel pretty good about Miami taking care of business? I mean, they've now been on such a big stage all season long. It seems like Louisville's going to, be the latest to get dispatched at home by Miami.
Yeah, I mean, I've always appreciated Jeff Brom in what he does at Louisville. I mean, Billy, I think he's probably one of the more this is not a knock to our Big Ten brethren. If you're winning at Purdue, you're doing something right as a head coach, and you're winning pretty consistently up there. And so I think Jeff Brom's probably one of the more underrated coaches in the country in terms of what he has. And look, I talked with Tyler Shuck at the Senior Bowl last year, and talked with Miller Moss, down at Manning Passing Academy. There's a sense of, if you go there as a quarterback, you're going to increase your value. And so, I like a lot of things they do at Louisville. For Miami, I think this is a test of, can you keep that same mentality, that same standard each and every single week? And it becomes, don't look ahead. Don't look ahead to what's next. And so for Mario Cristobal's crew, gosh, I know I mentioned it earlier, like, just don't get in the way of what this team can do. I think don't try to overcoach or overanalyze what you've got going on, because I think you got a phenomenal offensive coordinator in Shannon Dawson, who might be a coveted target by programs when we hit the offseason. Let your athletes play in space. You got the veteran quarterback. I think Miami takes care of business, but Louisville's a team to me that under Jeff Brom, they're always going to be in it. And so I don't see Louisville getting blown out per se, but we'll see what happens on the field Saturday. Miami does need to take care of business.
No doubt about that. Bryce Koon of the Crowded Booth and On3 Sports, thanks for joining us. We really appreciate your time, man, and we'll have you on again soon. We're going to have to bring you in a lot more as Georgia Tech continues to be a huge storyline in the ACC this year.
Appreciate it as always, Billy. Thanks so much, man.
All right, there he goes. Bryce Koon hanging out with us this morning on All Access AM. We are presented by Security National Bank. Go to securitynational.bank.com. If you want to throw the .com in there, I don't know if you have to, but they will be able to help you out, whether it be your personal wealth journey, whether it be your business or financial planning aspect of things. They can do all of that for you. They're a family-owned business and have been for many, many years across multiple generations now, and they can service any of your needs. So go to securitynationalbank.com to learn more about all their solutions that they can bring in for you. We appreciate their support of All Access AM. And thanks so much for Aaron Holland hanging out with us in the chat, as well as all of you guys listening with Bryce Koon on All Access AM this morning. Aaron, I agree with you. Undefeated in conference play. I was trying to toss it back to Bryce on that, so I did not get to add that qualifier with UVA, but they are playing like a team that has a chance to run the rest of their schedule and end up in Charlotte, or depending on a coin flip. We'll see how that goes. But look, let's cap. I want to start these Wednesday shows with, at some point, giving you guys some picks for the weekend to make. We'll get into kind of more preview stuff on Thursday with additional guests and talking about some of the matchups. But at least you could kind of lock in some of these picks for the weekend, and we'll go down the list, ACC only, really, and I'll really try to give you guys a pick here and there outside of it. But this ACC slate this weekend is so much fun, and if you're watching it on our YouTube channel, I've got the picks up there. These are the CBS lines. We love BetMGM on our end of things at On3, but their back end is a little difficult to read online. So here's your spreads as they stand right now. Louisville, Miami, 2 ACC games Friday night, plus 13.5 is where Louisville's at there. Man, I'm in the boat that this one might be a little bit closer. I think Miami is a really, really good football team. I do think Louisville is going to bring it this weekend, and this comes from somebody who is not overly high on Miller Moss, so probably a little bit of a contradiction there, that I think Louisville's just going to give Miami a really good fight on national television, 6 p.m. Central on Friday, first of 2 ACC games. But give me Louisville to cover, but Miami's going to win this one. I think this one is more of a 10-point game. I think the interesting thing for me is, how does Louisville stack up, from a defensive perspective, defending Malachi Toney? You don't want him to get hot. You don't want him to be able to run the show. Opponents averaging 21 points per game against Louisville, so not bad there. But they are a defense that has really, I think, improved a good bit over the course of from last season to this season. That was something that I think most Louisville fans were, at least when I was rolling out of Louisville after SMU had beat them, the call-in shows was all about the defense and how they needed change. I think so far this year, you're seeing a little bit of an improvement. Now, the competition level is not necessarily there, and Virginia was able to win that 30-27 game last weekend in OT, or not last weekend, but 2 weeks ago. Two weeks ago, coming off of a bye. Give me Jeff Rom to have his guys ready to roll this weekend. And I don't know if they get it done, but I think it's a close game. So give me Louisville to cover there. And then this one's fun because UNC and all the things that have gone wrong, they take their show on the road to Cal this weekend. Bears favored minus 10.5 here. I think this is a 14-point win for Cal. I don't see UNC getting off the bus very often this rest of the year with the way things have gone. If you look at North Carolina's remaining schedule as well, this is a team that I think most people can make a lot of money on over the course of the rest of this year. They do then host UVA next weekend and then head to Syracuse, which that one could be. I'd be interested to see any early lines or things like that on that. With the way Syracuse's offense has been, maybe that's a toss up even, and you can still make some money on UNC because I just don't see this being a competitive football team as a whole. But then you get into Saturday and 2 11 a.m. games in the ACC. BC hosting UConn. Bill O'Brien got kind of roasted a little bit online for saying that UConn should be favored. They're playing better, a bunch of different things. It is, oh man, I am riding with UConn on this. I think this is not a good matchup for BC, and it really seems like to me, UConn is a team that is very dangerous at times, just the way they've been able to get off the bus for certain games. But again, they also haven't really, played anyone outside of Q's, and they gave Q's. This was before Steve Angeli got hurt, though. They gave Q's a really good game the second weekend of September, or the first week, full weekend of September, however you want to look at that, in week 2, losing 27-20 in OT. So UConn's been able to, do some things this year. They do have a bad loss to Delaware out there, but kind of a Jekyll and Hyde team. But Boston College has just been straight up bad this year. Give me UConn to obviously win that one outright. And then we get into the fun one, Georgia Tech at Duke. Duke favored minus 3.5. I think we alluded to it on the discussion there with Bryce Koon, but Georgia Tech all the way, take them. I really like what they have put together this year. I think they're going to be able to go ahead and get a win and keep on rolling. I just think Darian Mensah has not been able to. Yeah, exactly. UConn had Syracuse running the sprints after the game, which, early in that year, disrespectful to Jim Moore and what he's done with less over there at UConn. It's kind of like what Syracuse is doing with Fran Brown, just doing a little bit more with less before Steve Angeli's injury. Georgia Tech, though, I just think they've got the mindset to go up there and win. It is a difficult place to play in a sense. Duke's going to be jacked up for it. But Darian Mensah, going back to what I was saying, he has been relatively inconsistent so far this year. He's been turnover prone at times. Haynes King will take care of the ball and keep things moving along for Georgia Tech there. SMU at Clemson. We picked this game on our podcast on the Pony Express covering SMU earlier this week. That'll come out on Wednesday and Thursday, our 2 kind of preview episodes. SMU at Clemson. Tigers favored minus 9.5 here. I don't know. Not since 2022 has Rhett Lashley in a conference game been blown out. And that was a very different SMU team back there in a very different league, in a very different situation. Since then, they've gone on a 19-game conference winning streak. We did pick SMU to win, and it's interesting when you talk about Clemson at home, they haven't been good. So it shouldn't be this surprise that some people could pick SMU outright because of Clemson's struggles at home. The question is, what SMU team ultimately shows up? And that's what we're going to find out on Saturday, is what are SMU fans in for the rest of the year? Because if they lose at Clemson, which great environment, hasn't been a place of horrors for anybody lately. Most opposing teams have been able to get their way at the Power 5 level at Clemson lately. This is a true test of where SMU's at. We think they win, and when you look at what they've been able to do this year, it's been completely a mixed bag, and Clemson's the same way. I'm starting to become in the pool where this Clemson team can't be fixed. I would be very surprised if they reeled off, an undefeated run the rest of the way until they met South Carolina. And then if you don't beat South Carolina, who's also down this year, man, that would be such an indictment on kind of where things are. It's not an indictment on Dabo Swinney as a whole, but they would have to really shift things around and make some changes in this modern day and age of college football. So I think for me, watching this weekend play out at Clemson is probably the most intriguing game of the weekend, because it really could set the overall trajectory of Stanford the rest of the way. They beat SMU. Maybe they can go on that run again and at least kind of settle things down a little bit going into bowl season. Or if they lose, I think the wheels fall off. I think Rhett Lashley and his staff, the way they've been able to get their teams up for conference play, and not just up, you have to be able to find ways to grind out wins. And this version of SMU is very different than the team that maybe trailed a handful of minutes in league play last year in the regular season. This year's SMU is absolutely a team that is going to be okay with winning by 1, winning by 4, having those kind of tough games. And so far in conference, they've been lucky enough to play, beat up Syracuse and then Stanford, and they've been able to roll for the most part. Now is the test. Nothing should surprise this SMU team. If I'm an SMU fan, I would be calling for not changes as a whole, but if they don't go up to Clemson and look competitive, which this line says that it might not be that competitive of a game in a sense, you've got to be wondering, okay, what is next as far as building this roster back to a version that can get to Charlotte. So, and one loss won't ruin them in a sense, but we picked SMU straight up. So you could pick them to cover. I think if you can find it at 10.5, that's even better. But just for a safety perspective, because you never know what Clemson magic is out there. But I do like SMU in that one. It just seems like things are in a precarious spot for Clemson. When you look at Washington State coming off of a really tough loss at Ole Miss, a team that they had on the ropes for most of the game, they head to Virginia. I think UVA is in a situation here where maybe you see them come back down to earth a little bit, but I like Virginia to obviously get the win here. Kudos to Washington State playing really, really hard this 2 weeks or last weekend in Oxford, and Virginia coming off the bye, coming off an emotional win over Louisville in overtime. I think they're going to kind of sleepwalk a little bit here. I would take Washington State to cover here. This is a big line, minus 17.5. I mean, if you look at UVA and what they've done, they were able to cover against Stanford at home. So that is worth noting. But Washington State, I think, has shown, that they can be competitive. So how does Washington State handle this weekend? I think they're going to come out playing really, really hard over there. They obviously had, a lot of emotion in their matchup with Ole Miss last week. Give me Washington State to cover here. Virginia probably wins by like 10, but you don't leave the game feeling incredible. That one Saturday, 5:30 p.m. Central Time. And then we get to the night ones, and boy, Pitt and Syracuse. This one could have been a huge game early in the season, but now Pitt makes a change at quarterback. Things hadn't been going well. That really helped them out. They're on the road at Q's. They don't have a long road trip here to make up there for this one, but the Syracuse offense is just in really bad shape. It's not one that you can even remotely look at the same way as you did earlier this season. And now I think this is a good test though of Fran Brown's team and kind of what they're going to be the rest of the way. Sitting at 3-3 overall, 1-2 in league play. Of course, the one win coming over Clemson. They've just not looked that good at all over those two other league games. So I am torn on here because I really respect Fran Brown and what he's put together, but I really liked what Pitt looked like last weekend, being able to beat Florida State. That's an impressive win from a roster perspective and a battle between those two teams. That is a kind of not program defining win of sorts, but the way they finished that game against Florida State really stuck out to me, and they were able to get what they needed to out of their true freshman quarterback Mason Heinchel. And I think I might have butchered that, but I think I'm getting better with it. So we'll keep on rolling. And finish up here, Florida State at Stanford. You guys heard at the beginning of the show, Matt LaSerre and I talk about this one. Florida State favored by 17.5 at Stanford. I got a chance to watch Stanford up close earlier this past weekend. Man, Florida State's overall positioning just seems to be in a much better spot than Stanford from a roster perspective. I think, man, it wouldn't shock me if this was like a 40-17 type of game, and you just kind of see FSU just kind of out athlete Stanford. The Florida State just roster is a better group of athletes, and if Matt LaSerre is correct and Florida State's getting healthier and all of those things, that's a big piece to this puzzle for the Noles as they look to, get back on track and finally win an ACC game. It's been a minute for the Noles. They've got to get over that hump and get back to their winning ways. So we'll be watching that one. Again, the pick there would be Florida State to cover that spread. It's a big one. The Noles haven't been great, don't get me wrong, but I just feel like from a roster perspective, it is a get-right game. I would probably stay away from it, but what we're going to give you is we're always going to pick every game. So we might say, okay, we're not going to touch that one. Don't feel like that's a good one to go after, but we will give you the actual pick if you feel so inclined to make one. And that's one where we'll probably stay away from it because the West Coast long trip and long journey feels like a house of horrors situation. But as much as everybody was excited about, oh, wow, Stanford, look at them stepping up, beating Boston College earlier this year. Look how much that has certainly fallen off as things are in a precarious spot there in Chestnut Hill. But Florida State has a roster that should really be able to out-athlete Stanford. I think they'll be able to stand up against Stanford's offense and kind of what they want to do. I think they'll match up a little bit better. SMU had so many issues in the secondary from a depth perspective at corner last week, and still were able to shut down Stanford's offense for about half their drives. It was either feast or famine. I think FSU's group of athletes probably a step up from where SMU's is at right now. For some reason, FSU just hasn't played as well or hasn't played as well as they can with that group and new defensive coordinator Tony White. But this is an opportunity for them to kind of play this straight up, I think, and grind out a win. And I think they pull away and cover. Like I said, I would not pick it, but we're giving out picks. That is my pick, is that Florida State does cover. But like Aaron Holland, who's been hanging out the entire time with us in the thread, too much talent and shouldn't lose. Is that not the epitome of Florida State football over the last year or so? Too much talent and shouldn't lose. And to kind of circle all the way back around to Matt LaSerre, our opening conversation on All Access AM with him, this Florida State team and where they're headed as a program right now, a lot of colleges need to kind of take a look at what's going on in Tallahassee. They give Mike Norvell another year. It's a lot of money to pay him out. They go out and hire Gus Malzahn, who I think that has been a decent success. It hasn't been nearly what it needed to be, but this was a program that needed a total kind of reset, rebuild. It's going to take a minute. Tony White coming in from Nebraska. I mean, what a hire. Like, those are good moves for an ACC team to make to show you that you're committed at the highest level to winning. And that's what Florida State is. They have got to figure out these roster issues. And some of these teams across college football as a whole, but some of them are having some of these holes in their rosters because of two things. You're not seeing the push to develop even more. You're not seeing that unwavering, that non-negotiable of, hey, we were good last year or we were really bad last year. Let's lock in and get that much better with the existing players on the roster. It's kind of a, okay, all right, awesome. We're keeping you. We're paying you money. We like what you're doing. Keep doing your thing. And there's got to be a driving force behind all of that. And some teams have it, some teams don't. And it comes and goes with each roster each and every year. But Florida State getting that win over Alabama shows there is something down in there for the Seminoles. They've got to keep pressing the right buttons at different moments over these next 6 months, really, to put that roster back in where it can actually overcome a bad game or a bad situation and win. And that's where the next step is for some of these teams that are committed at the coordinator level and the staff level and need to make changes at that level. Instead of firing a guy who's a good coach, like I think Mike Norvell, he's done it at multiple spots now. He is a really good coach. So you've got to find a way, if you're Florida State, to probably make this work for one more year and see where it goes. And sometimes as an AD, you've got to bet on something, right? Like Penn State bet on that they can go out and do better than James Franklin, which is a really tall task with how many wins he's gotten over the last 12 years with the Nittany Lions. But you better be sure you're going to go get that guy who can be that guy for you. Otherwise, you're going to end up fired. And I think Florida State right now, there's definitely a question of, okay, if you pay Mike Norvell that amount of money to go away, you have to hit the reset button anyway. Let's hit the reset button internally a little bit. Let's shake up some of the things in our process of building this roster, because we think we have two coordinators that can really make it go. And we like Mike Norvell. Let's put that piece into place and let's see how it rolls out. So that's what I would say with the Noles is what really needs to happen next for them. So they have a chance to kind of obviously get back on the right side of things in ACC play, winning a game for the first time in a long time. They have to go on the road to do it at Stanford. I think they have too much talent not to cover that game, but all they have to do is win. They're out of the conference championship race. They just have to win, show some promise here, get back to that promise early in the season and move forward. So with that, guys, going to let you guys go on this edition of All Access AM. We really appreciate Security National Bank. Go to securitynational.bank to learn more about how they can help your personal banking, your professional business banking, all of those things get into the right situation for you. And also OPW Solutions. They're in North Texas, they're in Oklahoma, they're in Arkansas, and they're expanding into the Southeast. They are a full service exterior maintenance company. They can do all sorts of different landscaping, pressure washing, snow and ice control, fence and concrete repair for you. Reach out to them, 214-444-3305, or email them, info@opwsolutions.com. Go to opwsolutions.com for more. And we will be back with you guys Thursday morning. We'll have a preview of the weekend with some more special guests. So thanks for listening, everybody. Appreciate Aaron Holland hanging with us all the way through. And yes, I think James Franklin would be one hell of a hire for Virginia Tech. And the best part is Virginia Tech should pay him $1 million a year, because I bet you James Franklin's feeling a little petty, even though he's a good guy. Spend that money on some great coordinators and figure it out. It would be great to see Virginia Tech back and rolling by the time SMU heads up there to play in Blacksburg in the next couple of years. So hope you guys enjoy your Wednesday. Have a great one. We appreciate you listening to us on All Access AM. Hit the subscribe button, the follow button, the like button, all of the things. And we'll catch you next time on All Access AM with our Thursday show. Thanks for listening. I'm Billy Embody. We appreciate you guys.